For those of you who are new, we'll spend the first half of this time talking about what co-housing is, why it matters in the world, some lingo. That'll take up about 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll break into smaller groups where you can have a chance to meet with people who are in forming communities, ask questions. We have several longtime communitarians here, connect with people who share your dream, etc. So that's just a chance for more dialogue to happen. So we'll get into those smaller groups for the second half. So without further ado, let's get started. You're here, it's the 10th of the month at 10, and we are here on the 10th of every month at 10 a.m. Mountain. So you're welcome to join us each time. And a little bit about us. So, sorry, I'm just getting my screens still sorted here. There we go. So our new name is the National Cohousing Alliance, soon to launch this big new brand and new website, but again, the same organization. We are a national nonprofit that drives the growth and evolution of co-housing and community-rooted housing in the U.S. We seek to expand the societal reach of community-rooted housing by raising awareness and promoting strategies that create vibrant, sustainable communities that are attainable, inclusive, and resilient. So how we do this is pretty much three buckets. So we do a lot of educating. We have in-person events and a virtual learning platform. We have newsletters and social media, all in an effort to help people understand co-housing, to help them build communities and thrive in communities, and to support the broader societal impacts of co-housing. We also advocate for co-housing through our outreach and publications. We partner with the Co-Housing Research Network, which Neil leads, so he can provide more information on that. And then perhaps most meaningfully is we create containers for you all to connect with one another. So we know that most of the magic of community lives with you all. It's in the connections between future neighbors, between forming groups and the professionals that help bring their dreams to life. It's in the longtime communitarians who can provide mentorship and wisdom to new people. So we do our best to create spaces for that, both virtually and in person, in an effort to grow co-housing. We are a small but mighty team of staff, a lot of passionate volunteers and board members. We have advocates and communitarians, as well as our professional partners. So it's really a grassroots movement, and we're glad that you have found your way here today. So this is taken from our website. This is a map of co-housing in the US today. So right now there are around 160 existing co-housing communities in the US. There are about 140 in some stage of development. This could include anything from some folks gathered around doing potlucks and sharing their dream to actually being under construction. This is a combination of multi-generational communities, which make up the majority of co-housing communities in the US. It also includes senior co-housing. We'll talk about both of these here in a little bit. They are urban, suburban, rural. It really runs the gamut. So we'll share more about some of those specifics and those spectrums here in a moment. And this map reflects Danish-style co-housing. There are many, many other models of community-rooted housing. We'll talk about some of those, from co-ops to eco-villages to retrofits. But we know that there's a growing interest in community due to loneliness, for the affordability crisis in housing, concerns around sustainability, the desire to age in place, et cetera, et cetera. So community-rooted housing is really having a moment, and we're excited to share more. So I'll talk a little bit about loneliness. For a number of reasons. So loneliness is an epidemic in the US, and it's something that touches many of us. So before the COVID pandemic, we were already in the midst of the loneliness epidemic. So we talk a lot about how COVID exacerbated loneliness, but this was a problem. Thank you. This was already a problem before 2020. So, in a pre-2020 survey, 61% of people in the US reported experiencing pervasive loneliness. This is not just that they are familiar with loneliness, but it's a pervasive part of their lives. And that was up from 54% just the year prior. So we can see the trend there. We talk a lot about how prevalent loneliness is among older adults. So one survey reported that just under half of adults over 65 considered the TV or a pet their main source of company. But loneliness is also a problem for Gen Z. So 54% of Gen Zers in a survey said that they don't feel like anyone knows them well. We know that prolonged loneliness is correlated with chronic stress, increased risk of heart disease, dementia, depression, and anxiety. And in fact, people who are lonely are 35% more likely to die earlier than their more connected peers. So just to put this in the scope of other public health issues, this makes loneliness as harmful for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. So I spend so much time on this, not because loneliness is the only driver for people joining community. That's certainly not the case. But we do believe that loneliness is this foundation for many of the social problems that we face. And we believe that co-housing is a solution to many of those problems. So that's why I spend some time kind of dragging us down into the doldrums of loneliness. But we're here to talk about solutions. So I'm going to tell you about co-housing. So, of course, we know that communal living, multi-generational living, a more collective way of life has existed in many forms for all of human existence. So when I talk about history, I'm really talking about this particular model that began in Denmark in the 1960s. So it started with families who wanted something between the suburban isolation and communes. And so it really took off in Denmark. It was influenced by Scandinavian social design, the child-friendly environments, and then it spread to the US in the late 1980s and 90s. It was brought to the US by Charles Durrett and Katie McCamant. They wrote this book right here called Creating Co-Housing, Building Sustainable Communities. If you're new to the co-housing world, this is often what we refer to as the book, the blue book. This is a great place to start your co-housing journey or to continue it if you haven't picked it up. So basically, Chuck and Katie traveled to Denmark. They learned about co-housing and they brought it back to the US. And both of them are still very involved in co-housing to this day. So I'm going to zoom out and talk about language a little bit. So we'll start with this term intentional community. Intentional community is an umbrella term, and underneath that is a wide spectrum, including co-housing, including communes, including many models. Intentional community really just means a planned residential community designed from the start to have a high degree of social cohesion. Again, it's an umbrella, and co-housing does identify as one form of intentional community. You might hear some other terms used interchangeably as this sort of umbrella term, such as community housing, collective housing, communal living, or as we at the Alliance have been using, community-rooted housing. So it's just housing with connection designed from the start. So underneath that intentional community umbrella term are many, many models. I'm just going to highlight a few. So you probably have heard the term commune. A commune tends to be on one end of the intentional community spectrum, where co-housing exists on the other end of that spectrum. A commune is a residential community that shares resources and often finances. Co-housing does not share finances. So that's why I say it's on the opposite end of the spectrum. You probably also have heard of a cooperative, a housing co-op. This is when a collection of units or a house is owned by a cooperative. So basically, people create an entity, it's a cooperative, it owns the structure, the building, and then residents of that community are actually shareholders in the cooperative. So a cooperative can be more affordable and accessible because it allows those without a down payment to begin, or without as much of a down payment to begin to earn equity in their share. And then there's something called a limited equity cooperative, which actually caps inflation so that membership is always affordable. So I mention this because you'll learn that co-housing is not a financial model. It actually intersects with other financial models, and you can have co-housing that's also a cooperative. There's also another model that can intersect with co-housing. It's called an eco-village. This is simply an intentional community whose focus is the regeneration of social and natural environments. So you can have co-housing that's also focusing on the regeneration of social and natural environments. So you can have both. And let's see, there's also something called a retrofit community, which I'll talk more about. This is where you basically have existing housing stock and pour the social infrastructure, the co-housing sauce on it, and create a community. I'll talk more about that here in a moment. And then I wanted to spend a minute on co-living because this is a newer term that often describes shared housing, but doesn't necessarily indicate shared governance, which is a critical component of co-housing and most other intentional communities. So co-living is often conflated in the media and in public discourse with co-housing, and they're actually pretty different. So often co-living might refer to individual rooms but shared kitchens and bathrooms, whereas co-housing traditionally means your own private, complete home, private kitchens and bathrooms with shared space. And then also co-living doesn't typically include the other core features of intentional community like shared decision making, shared finances, shared labor. Often in co-living, there's an external entity planning the programming, managing the community, making decisions. So I just wanted to highlight that because they're often mixed up. So. Okay, so let's talk about co-housing. This is why you're here. So we define co-housing as an intentional, collaborative neighborhood that combines private homes with shared indoor and outdoor spaces designed to support an active and interdependent community life. So as I mentioned, co-housing is not a legal model or a financial model. It's really more of a descriptive term and a social model. So it emphasizes the active participation of residents, and involvement and a culture of shared support. So a few critical elements of co-housing. So when you look at a co-housing community, you can tell that it's co-housing for the most part. So the design is intentionally planned to facilitate organic connection. So for example, oftentimes cars will be pushed to the periphery and maybe the porches would face inward. There would be sidewalks connecting different homes, courtyards, common spaces, again, all designed to facilitate those natural run-ins as you're walking from your home to your car. You're likely going to run into a neighbor and check in with them on how their meeting went or return the snowshoes that you borrowed, have that organic connection. So that's all by design. But you can't just have the design piece. So design is an important piece, but it has to be matched with the social infrastructure. And what I mean by social infrastructure is the systems and efforts that we make to organize ourselves. So, for example, co-housing communities are self-managed. They have many structures of governing themselves and managing labor. This could include regular community meetings, many use an HOA as the legal foundation. Most of them have committees, conflict resolution processes. It's how we make decisions together, how we function together as a community. And the social infrastructure also includes the fun part of community. So you'll often hear that the common meal is referred to as the secret sauce of community. We really believe that gathering together for meals is a critical piece of building these relationships, building a culture of support. So communities gather anywhere from Some communities gather every night, some gather once a month. Most are, 1 to 3 times a week, but really building in that regular interaction. And then the gatherings, the Super Bowl parties, the baby showers. Many communities have standing Friday happy hours. It's those fun, joyful spaces for connection that emerge when we have relationships, when we know our neighbors and we live our lives together. Another important piece of co-housing is that it's private homes plus shared space. Typically there will be, co-housing can be condos, townhomes, a variety of shapes of housing, but they're usually complete with your separate bathroom, kitchen, etc. And then in addition to that, you have your shared spaces. So you have your common space, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that could include any number of shared amenities. You have your courtyards, your gardens, your playgrounds, your shared workshop, your shared guest room, etc. So it's really that those shared amenities are in addition to private homes in Danish style co-housing. Okay, so these are the principles of co-housing. So we value participatory process so that the residents are involved in shaping the community so that it reflects their needs and their values. The design, as I mentioned, is designed for connection. It's trying to foster interaction. It's thoughtful. We have at least one of our favorite co-housing architects here today. And so that's just built into the beginning, that it's not designed just like a regular neighborhood. It's designed with connection at the center. That common space is, as I mentioned, this could include a common house, a shared large kitchen in addition to private kitchens, activity rooms. These are all to complement but not replace private homes. That resident management piece is really important. So it's the residents making the decisions about what happens in their community. And then non-hierarchy. So you will not find a leader of a co-housing community. Co-housing communities are intentionally a flat structure. They use collaborative governance where every voice is heard and matters in the process, and decisions are made as a group. So those are a few of the co-housing principles. You can read more about those in the book, the Blue Book. Okay, so many communities, but not all communities, have a common house. Most communities have a common space. These are examples of a common house. This is in Bozeman co-housing. And the common house is an important piece of the social infrastructure. So it's a space for the community to come together for these regular meals, for their meetings, for their parties and gatherings. It's also a space that individuals can use for their personal projects, and really is how folks are able to oftentimes downsize to a smaller individual home because they have access to the shared space in the common house for the parties, for the storage of the giant wok that you use once a year for paella. Oftentimes a common house will have guest rooms. So that individuals don't have to have and maintain guest rooms that sit empty most of the time. Instead, we can pool our resources and share them, and they can live in the common house. So these are some beautiful pictures of a brand new common house, and not all communities have a common house. So some of them have a common room. Some of them have a repurposed barn, courtyards, etc. So the two photos on the right are common houses. And then on the left are a little bit different. So that bottom left is the courtyard at Capitol Hill Urban Co-housing in Seattle. They also have a dining room adjacent to that courtyard there. The top left is from Radish. So it's really up to the community to get creative, but just kind of incorporating that need for a space for the community to gather. And that can look a lot of different ways. So if you've seen one co-housing community, you've really just seen one co-housing community because they're all so different. There are many spectrums from design to social infrastructure that vary between communities. So there are rural communities, urban, suburban. They can be made up of detached single-family homes, duplexes, multiplexes, condos, etc. They can also be either multi-generational or senior communities. So this is a photo of an intergenerational community on the northwest side of Denver. I was a founding member. It's called Aria. This is my daughter. This is her first birthday. She's surrounded by her community there in our courtyard. And I mention that because as someone who parented in community, that was a really important piece of my journey. And in fact, many young parents experience significant loneliness in those early years. And yet many of us long for this village that we have heard that we need. And so I mention that just because co-housing provided that village for me and does for a lot of young parents. So it was a really important part of my experience. There are also senior co-housing communities. So senior co-housing seeks to meet the needs of boomers who make up about 20% of the US population. It offers people a way to age in place with a supportive social network. So as we learned earlier, social isolation affects seniors at higher rates than the general population. And so communities seek to address that. We also know that as individuals age, their health often deteriorates unnecessarily due to loneliness, due to depression, the related health issues. So co-housing mitigates that loneliness and the related health problems. It also helps people to recover more quickly because if you have a knee surgery, you're going to recover more quickly because you have a neighbor bringing you food and taking out your trash and driving you to doctor's appointments. So it's certainly not an assisted living, but we know that we are healthier and we are able to age in place longer when we have a supportive social network around us. So there are about a little more than a dozen existing senior co-housing communities in the US today, about the same number in development. They tend to be a mix of retired folks and still working, so they're usually 55 and up. And we have a senior co-housing committee that would love to share more about senior co-housing. So we'll have a breakout group if you want to ask them some questions today. But also they host a Q&A on the 20th of every month at 10 a.m. Mountain that's similar to this, but designed for seniors interested in living in both multi-generational and senior communities. So there's probably a link for that in the chat. Okay, I said that I would mention retrofit co-housing as well. So this idea is when you have existing housing stock, whether it's a traditional neighborhood, an apartment building, a mobile home park, and you fill in the social infrastructure. So these photos are of a community in Davis, California called N Street. Over many years, they ended up tearing down the fences on this entire city block and then converting one of the houses into their common houses. They built a meal program, committees, decision making without developing a new community. So that's really an exciting model, and we're seeing that be done in different forms using ADU legislation and buying up different housing stock. So I mentioned retrofit because I think that it's an important piece of the future of co-housing. Okay, so I mentioned that we really believe that community rooted housing is a solution to not only loneliness, but many of the related social issues that we face today. So we believe that community and connection is part of building a stronger democracy. So research has shown that co-housers are more civically engaged than your average American. They're showing up to rallies, they're organizing events and actions about causes that they care about. They're also able to dialogue across difference and resolve conflict with their neighbors. So we believe that if we have more neighborhood connection, more connection within our homes, that will actually build a stronger democracy. We also believe that co-housing strengthens climate resilience. So you can see it in everything from this ethos of sharing to reducing consumption, composting, EV charging stations, car sharing. The communities are engaging in this daily practice that is lighter on the planet. But also, we believe that when we experience deep belonging, we're called less to consume, and instead we're called into engaging in a way of life that is more connected and more regenerative. We know that co-housing allows people to remain independent longer through that everyday connection and through that naturally occurring mutual support that happens in communities. And we know that communities are resilience. So co-housing is rebuilding that social fabric by fostering everyday connection, by showing us how to ask for support when we need it and offer it when we can. There are spaces of collective care and mutual aid, and we know that that is more important now than ever. So I hope that you share that belief too after today. And if you're leaving feeling like, yes, I really want to find my way into co-housing, I'll tell you there's 3 ways to find your way into a co-housing community. Number 1, you can join an existing community. Most communities have an interest list that they email when a unit becomes available. It doesn't happen often, as you can imagine. When people get into co-housing, it's hard to leave. But there are, we have a directory on our website that you can check out to see what communities are in your area, maybe see if they would host you for a community dinner or a tour. So that can be one way. Another way is to join a forming group. So there are many forming communities in the US today. We're going to hear from some of them here in a moment. And they are actively looking for their neighbors. And so that can be a faster way into community if there is a group in an area where you would like to set down roots. And then, of course, you can form your own. We support groups across the life cycle of community. So we have lots of trainings and programs designed to help you build your own community if that is the path that you choose. So again, our directory lists both existing and forming groups. So check that out. There are also a few other places that we would encourage you to get connected. So there's the co-housing listserv is an email listserv that is really supportive. It's a supportive community where you can just put questions and it's a lot of resource sharing. You can come back to the Commons as many times as you like. The second half, again, will be a space of connecting. And then we have virtual learning, again, that supports everywhere from how to find land and how to form your community to how to thrive once you're in it, manage death and dying, how to have more fun, how to manage labor, etc. So we have hundreds of training sessions on our virtual learning platform. And let's see, we also will be gathering in person in May in Seattle. Registration is now open for the Co-Housing Summit in Seattle. We're coming together for one day of programming, breakout sessions designed to support forming and existing communities as well as those who are just exploring. And then we're going to have some really exciting tours on the 14th, 15th, and 17th. So a whole weekend of community in Seattle coming up in May. Okay, last thing from me. We do have membership programs designed to support your growth, and we have programs that are designed for individuals and communities. So what you get for your membership is free access to all of our virtual events, and then 25% off of our trainings and courses, our online trainings and courses. Also 25% off of our in-person gatherings, and then access to, again, hundreds of recorded sessions on pretty much every topic that you can imagine. This is an annual price. So if you're an individual, it's $150 a year. It also supports the growth of community-rooted housing nationwide, as we are a nonprofit. So we're grateful for this partnership. We have programs that are designed for communities for $750 a year. That's basically an individual membership for everyone in your community. So if you have more than five people in your community, you can see that it's worth the investment. If you have less than five people in your community, we'd be happy to offer you a discount. And then finally, we have a program called the Community Launch Program. And this is designed for forming communities. We offer them all of those educational benefits, plus lots of opportunities for them to help reach their future neighbors. And that is a segue into, these are our current Community Launch members. So again, these are communities who are in some stage of formation and are part of our community launch program. And we've got a few of them here today to give a quick little pitch about their community. And then if you'd like, you can visit them in a breakout room, or they will let you know their next info session if you want to learn more. So if you are here from one of these communities, give me a little Zoom hand